Hey there, welcome to another episode of Own It for Good, where we talk about what it means to own it for good. I am a personal responsibility, work in progress, activist, advocate, and coach. And that's all a work in progress as well. um, but I'm going to be super casual today, as I always am. Those of you that have been watching it all know I'm fairly new to this. And those of you that are only listening right now, just bear with me a moment while I talk to the viewers. I realized today when I was kind of looking back at YouTube a lot, I'm still learning this whole thing, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm owning it. And I realized I was doing my iPhone the other way. So I'm trying a whole new format today. I was doing it in selfie mode before and I was looking at myself, and now I'm just looking at the back of my camera and I'm hoping and praying that it all turns out good. So without further ado, let's get on with the topic du jour. Again, my name is Felicia Holmes, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, and I am a coach, and I absolutely love what I do. I have developed a system and a program called Own It, and I've spent the last couple of episodes kind of breaking down what that means. But just as a review, Own it is obviously, those are words on their own that mean something. We all use them all the time. They're not trademarked. I don't own the words own it. But own it, really means taking kind of personal responsibility. You're owning it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. For good, I added those words on because that sort of means to be resolved. But also it means that when we own it, we can become better, which then helps maybe people that are in our immediate vicinity be a little bit better, and our relationships be a little bit better. Maybe it broadens out to our community. There's a ripple effect of goodness when we become who we are meant to be. When we own who we are, we own what we want to become, and we embrace all that that means and are working towards being fully conscious human beings, awake, alive, and present in our own lives. As one of my favorite other coaches loves to say, Jen Couch at Sobersis, to be awake, fully present in your own life. So the last two episodes, I have covered the O, which is means outcome. So we have to sort of take a look at, what do you want? What do you want your outcome of your life to be? The outcome of your days. So own it is not just a macro concept, meaning larger, applying it to the big picture, but it can be the micro level. Like, what does that mean day to day? Or even if you're struggling moment to moment some days, what do you want? What is your outcome? That's being purposeful, intention, kind of knowing what you're moving towards. W is for why. Why do you want this? Again, this can be that broader macro level or down to the micro level. And today we are going to unpack the N. Now what? Now what are we going to do about it? And in the future episodes, we will talk about the I, which stands for integrity, to live in alignment, to make decisions from a place of being integrated, having integrity. And then finally, the T is for taking action. Okay, so let's get to today's topic. So if I look at my notes, I've got some here too that I may be looking down at. I'm also getting over a summer cold, which is why I'm also a day behind my normal schedule today. So if I reach for a glass of water or have to pause, know that I'm also have got that going on. And okay, so now what? N, now what? Now that we know what we want and why we want it. Now, what are we going to do about it? And I'm going to start off just by sharing a little bit of my personal story. And I've been on this journey for a few years now. And um, and by journey, I mean my specific struggle. I gained some weight, and then I started to have some struggles with energy, and all that comes with that, and a lot of just shame and getting myself just stuck. And I basically wasn't owning it. I was looking and giving all the excuses of why, blaming it on hormones, kids, being a mom, too busy, being a realtor, way too busy, um, overwhelmed. I was just overwhelmed, and I wasn't owning it. I was very stuck in the vortex of day-to-day life, and just kind of drowning a little bit. And when I really started, every time I started to look at, I would go outside, out looking for the magic solution to my weight, and falling for a lot of the tactics that are out there. Just try this magical program over here in 30 days, or this way of eating. And what I was running into with some of the health and wellness knowledge out there, I personally was feeling like nobody was addressing to me what was the elephant in the room, which was nobody was asking or addressing in their diet plan. There was no room or even thinking about this, my 3 glasses of wine at night. And I found that to be really, really curious. And I didn't really know what to do about that. I was having this sort of internal battle of, okay, now what do I do? I kind of know that I want to lose weight. I'm pretty strong with my why, but everything I was bumping into out in the world wasn't really helping me address what I knew was the heart of the matter for me. Until I found a coach and an author. I'm not sure she calls herself a coach, but I consider her a coach and a mentor, is Chalene Johnson. And she has a great podcast by her, just her name, but she wrote a book called Push. And I found that. And I think I found her initially because I found her workout program on Beachbody called PiYo. But Chalene introduced this concept of the push goal. And that is what sort of helped me go into further about how to deal with like this now what question. Now what do I do? Because I had identified sort of what I wanted, and I knew why I wanted it, but I just felt a little bit lost and overwhelmed with the position I had gotten myself into, and really how to tackle it, and just getting really frustrated. And if you've listened to some other episodes of mine as well, I talked in one episode about the clicking lock. So if you have like one of those school locks, and it's a dial, and you've kind of, let's say the combination is own it, right? I like to think that, my little acronym could be very helpful and a solution for somebody. But even then, each lock is a little bit different and very sensitive to the fact that you've got to do the combination in the right order, in the right direction. And if you kind of overshoot it or overdo it, you kind of got to start over. So I think of this whole process as very flexible, not necessarily linear, and this allows it to be very personal. And so that's what I kind of want you to get out of my sharing today, is to one thing that does not work in the now what am I going to do about it? You're not going to win this war and get what you want, even with a strong why, if through negative tactics like shame and guilt and just willpowering yourself into it. It really needs to come from a place of curiosity versus judgment. That's a really big one. Being willing to experiment and try different things. Try what works for you. Take in a lot of information, and to really think of this as a long process. This is a long game. If you're looking for a quick fix, I'm probably not going to be your girl. You didn't get yourself in this position overnight, and it's very hard and probably unrealistic to think that you can get yourself out of it. Now, there is a lot of information out there and a lot of people that can, and there's evidence if you think other than what I'm saying, like go for it. But you will find people that can hit a goal in a specific amount of time through willpower, through using different tactics, but do they maintain it? And that's what I'm after. I don't want to mess around with yo-yoing anymore and being on this merry-go-round. I want off of the crazy train. And for me and some of the coaches and practices that I align with and that I follow and that I now even talk about and use in my own practice is more of the long game approach. And that is making small changes consistently over time that will eventually change the trajectory of where you're going. So back to now what, and even my story. Now what also combines a level of, and I've talked about this in other episodes too, a level of self-awareness, really brutal honesty. Like, this process may not feel very good as you're going through it, and really owning, like I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly, truths about what you're doing now that is creating the outcome that you are wanting to change or get out of and go in a different direction. So honesty, I'm just going to list a bunch of things, and you take what resonates out of it for you, because part of this is getting to learn about you and what works for you. I've mentioned the Enneagram on my show here before, and I'm a huge believer in it. I include it in my practice. I think it's an amazingly useful tool if you are willing to really dive into it and use it. But as a practitioner and a user of the tool myself, I am an Enneagram 9. And if you're familiar at all with the Enneagram, you know that is the peacemaker. We are one of the most common types out there. But it helped me get into this mode of honesty and self-awareness. If you're ready for the Enneagram, you can go check that out, learn it on your own. You're certainly willing to get in contact with me. I'll be happy to talk with you more about it. But the Enneagram was when I encountered the Enneagram, and I had encountered it before, but I just wasn't ready for it. And so that's another thing to also keep in mind. There's a cute saying out there, but it's absolutely true. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I just was not ready for the Enneagram before I was. So if it's not resonating with you, no worries. Don't sweat it. Don't push it on yourself. Don't try to force it. Like, that's the other thing. Whatever you feel like is resonating for you, consider yourself as that student now. What are you ready for? So this is sort of the now what question is kind of nebulous, and it's meant to be that way because this is a very personal process, because at the end of the day it's about you. It was about me. I had to sit with my process, and as a 9, I sat with it for a while because that's part of being a 9. But I really had to sit with and process. Okay, I've defined my outcome, and I know why I want it. Now what? That was, I had to sit with that for a while. And going back to Shalene, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there and didn't finish my thought about her, and she actually borrowed her concept of push. She repackaged it and from a other coach and influencer author out there called Brian Tracy. You've probably heard of him. I think he wrote the book Eat That Frog. So none of this information is new. What you're hearing from me is not brand new either. It's my spin on it. It's new in the fact that I'm saying it the way only I can say it and deliver it. And if you've found me, it's because I resonate with you, and maybe I'm your teacher, just like I've had teachers. But what Shalene helped me see, and I really appreciate that she learned something from Brian Tracy. She took it and used it and then is reteaching it. So this is just how the world works, which I just love. But anywho, she described the process as like if your outcome and what you want to achieve is a series of dominoes, and maybe your ultimate goal is this end domino. But in order to get to the end domino, you've got to have a lead domino, or the one that pushes things over and makes everything else go along easier. So why is this important, and why was this part of my story with talking about this today? Well, that was sort of the process of now what am I going to do about this? I knew what I ultimately wanted, which is to, and I'm still very much on that journey. I have begun it. I've got a good solid start on it, but I've still got a long way to go. But again, long game, because I am in this for the long haul. It's just going to become who I am, not somebody who is continually fighting with this. I will kind of wrestle with it for a few years, and then I'm going to be done with it and move on to the next thing. So this is my series of dominoes, or my lock to work with now. So when I went, and she walks you through the whole process, and I will walk you through that too as part of my program. Or if you want to just go to your library or go to her podcast and learn her methodology, that's great too. Like I'm all about just providing some value here. So this is what my process included. And the idea of this push goal was very helpful for me because it helped me to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and also helped me identify where to start. Now, here's where I talked about willingness before. Willingness plays a big role in this too. And it took me a minute to get there on the willingness part. I kind of identified, okay, I knew for me, my 3 glass of wine habit a day was not helping. But I was not willing to give that up yet. So but I did start to adopt some other very good mindset changes that I think ultimately did help me. As I was wrestling with and experimenting with, trying different things. And if you listen to my other episode, can I have my cake and eat it too? I stayed in that process. I stayed on that fence for a little while, hoping that there was a way I could have my outcome and not give up my wine. But for me, ultimately, I did come to the conclusion after, trying some different things. I even worked with a personal coach. I did several different things, but I started to really learn about myself as a human. To try to learn, I started learning how to not be so hard on myself. Give myself credit for trying different things, even though I wasn't having the success I wanted. And that's the other thing that I've learned through this whole process either, is to even redefine what success looks like. Mindset shifts are big success milestones. And if you can recognize them in yourself, if you can really embrace this now what questioning and constantly revisit it. And again, it's this broader, big picture planning, now what to keep in mind and shift and constantly reevaluate. But it's also every day. Like I do this every morning. Okay, now what am I going to do today? I've got 5 appointments on my schedule. If I really like to be outside a lot whenever possible and spend a lot of time walking. I have dogs that I love walking my dogs. I have 2 big border collies, border collie mixes. But that's one of I just look forward to that. That's an integral part of my day. So I also have to keep in mind the weather. I have to keep in mind my schedule. I have to keep in mind this time of year, the humidity and heat index. There's a lot of things that you can use this now what tool about to really hone in and customize. It's all about customizing this to work for you. A little bit more about how, just to give you practical examples and to work with me, because I know me the best, is I am a learner. I love to read and I love to consume information. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because this was how I found my people. I know how this is how my people are going to find me. So I love to go through the whole thought process, brainstorming, research, learning. I'm also a Christian, so prayer is a big part of my now what strategy. Deciding, just making a decision. And that's where the willingness part, is always comes into play. And just because something can work and you see it work for somebody else, is it something that you're willing to do? If it's not, then don't even fight and struggle with that. Like, that is like fighting against yourself and then inviting more and more shame and the yo-yo and that whole process into your life. And we don't have time for that here. We've got to own it, and we've got things to do and purposes to fulfill, missions to complete. We don't have time to mess around with things that we're not really willing to do. So willingness is just huge. And meet yourself where you are and know that over time that willingness may grow through experience, through success, through completing things, doing things that you didn't think that you could do. Your willingness level will grow as you grow. But in order to grow and climb a ladder, you've got to meet yourself where you are. Since I mentioned the word ladder, I want to use an analogy that, and you may have seen it out there before being used, but a lot of people do employ it, is, so if we take the concept of a ladder and rungs, a lot of people in the self-development world, and I think a lot of good changes have happened recently where people have learned, oh, yeah, that's probably, there's been a lot of misconceptions. Well, if I just think positive thoughts and claim it and say all these affirmations and just think positive, I can do it. They were leaving this kind of willingness factor out there and the reality of where somebody might be. So if you see a ladder and it's just too big for you, you just can't jump to that next level, then you need to insert some more steps in there. You need to maybe include mindset shifts like, it's possible that I can change. Have a willingness to, okay, I can't think positive today, or I can't say, oh, I know I can lose 25 pounds. Instead, you could say, it's possible that I could walk a little bit more and maybe eat some more vegetables on a regular basis. That your mind has to be able to also believe it. So there's a willingness and there's a doability, like being realistic about where you are and not what will you do, what can you do on a repeated and consistent basis. Because consistency is the mother of all things. Because what you do becomes who you are, and how you do anything is how you do everything. So in order to climb a mountain, you really do have to start with where you are, and that means accepting that you might be at the bottom of that and that you might have some work to do. So another really important thing to consider when you're building your now what sort of, I'm going to call this almost like a brainstorming kind of session you might go through with yourself, of just possibilities of things as you're researching and learning and praying, meditating, deciding or even understanding what your commitment level might be, is that you might want to also include relationships and connections and accountability as part of your plan too. And a lot of people don't like that word accountability, or maybe think that they don't maybe need it, or maybe when we get stuck into shame and we're in a negative thought pattern with our life, it's easy to also withdraw and isolate. But that's actually very very hard on your success to do it in isolation, because that's where your own brain and your own negative thought patterns can just really keep you stuck. So being part of a community, leaning into relationships, talking to people and sharing with them where you are, asking for support, maybe finding an accountability buddy or a coach. And then you've also got to prioritize different things. And again, this comes back to what's realistic for you. What are you willing to do? This has to work. Whatever plan you start to formulate and your now what question has to fit with your life. Because there's a lot of things when we look at them, oh yeah, I could do that. Like training for a marathon sounds great. Like that might be a 10-year goal that I have. But right now, when I really look at what it takes to train for a marathon, and when I look at the reality of where I currently am physically, it's probably not where I want to put all of my time and attention when I also look at all of the other goals that I have. So you've also got to prioritize and really focus on what's most important to you right now. And meeting yourself in a very realistic fashion. And if you're in a family and you're a mom, and if you've got young kids, like all of these things matter. So you've got to be able to kind of put the whole picture together. But this now what process takes, okay, I know what I want, I know why I want it. Okay, now I got to start formulating a plan here. And we're going to unpack that a little bit further as we continue with the acronym. But this is where the rubber starts to meet the road, is what are you going to do about this? And so you've got to be self-aware. You've got to really have compassion and appreciation for yourself. Have honesty. Employ mindset shifts like curiosity versus judgment, being willing to fail and experiment, and it's never really failure if you consider everything more if you can start to turn yourself into a self-scientist. Like, I'm just going to study myself. Everything is going to be an experiment as I try things, and as they work and don't work, I'm going to learn more about myself and start keeping like a file cabinet of all of these things too. So don't ignore this, and then really pay attention. Oh, I see. I can totally understand why I thought that might work, and I saw XYZ person over here doing it, and Susie had such great results. And this, again, if I back up and talk about the Enneagram for a second, again, this is why this is so helpful for me, because I'm married to an Enneagram 1, the perfectionist. And so what I was even personally doing, and hi honey, if you're out there watching, don't take this personally. But what I found myself doing is looking at him, because he is very task oriented, can just go through a list, get things done. Even if he had the same amount of drinks as I had the night before, or even ate the same food, like, it doesn't seem to affect him the same way. He's able to just get his stuff done anyway. He just has that sort of self-determination. He will power through, very focused, like all very admirable qualities that he has. I mean, I picked him for a reason. But what I found myself doing personally is getting very frustrated, going, why can't, and comparing myself to him, and then feeling shame and a sense of failure. Like, why can't I do that? I was expecting to be, I didn't really understand this difference that the Enneagram helps me understand, and how differently some of our brains are wired. And there's a reason why. And once I started working with myself versus against myself, or once I even, and that was even a process, but once I stopped trying to do things the way that it worked for him, the more I was able to just focus and have this self-scientist, self-archaeologist attitude towards myself. And let's just see what works for Felicia. Well, that takes experimenting and being willing to get it wrong sometimes, but learning, and like, that is valuable feedback, to learn what does not work for me as much as what does work for me. Because as I move forward and as I move on to different goals, I can keep those things in mind. I have a running catalog that grows and is changing, and even as I change, and if it's something I even want to change, I can keep in mind and develop more specific strategies around this new self-awareness and this level of honesty that I keep, digging into as I am doing. Like, even doing this in front of y'all is, like, this is a big deal for me. Definitely out of my comfort zone. And that's okay. And this is how I am growing, and I will get more comfortable with it. But I feel called to do it, because I know that there are people out there that really resonate with how I communicate. I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I'm going to have to learn to be okay with that as well. And all of it's going to be a journey and a process. So I'm just really glad that you are taking any time out of your schedule to hear what I have to say, learn with me, and grow with me as we learn how to own it together. And if you want to work with me or want to learn or have any questions about me, I do free consultations. I would love to see how we can help each other grow and make this world a better place. Can you imagine if we all took this more mindful approach to and this level of being willing to own it and have personal responsibility? If we were all me-sponsible, how much better would our world be? So this is sort of the mission I am on in life, to really be on this adventure of growth and opportunity, and to help others as much as I can along the way also be me-sponsible. All right, until next time. And I made it through without coughing, so yay!